Hello everyone, welcome to the Code Code, and today we are going to learn about the data injection and annotated. So this data injection and annotated is feels bit annoying when we don't understand the concept and we are using it in our code just because FastAPI is recommending it or someone else in your team is using this terminology and you have to copy it without understanding. So let's understand what we are going to learn in this part and we will see the examples too. So let's start. So what we will learn is the concept of DI. So in this part, we will understand what is this DI, how this DI looks, and how we can implement DI in our code. Then we are going to understand how to use annotated. This annotated is a very bit crucial part in the fast API, and this fast API with the annotated, we have so many features which we need in our API development. So after understanding these two concepts, we are going to implement the post and get API using the data injection and annotated. So after these three parts, we will see how this annotated worked between the data injection and the fast API which you have created. So first let's understand the concept of DI. So here's the artrage and le let's assume you have this fast API method. You have this app.get and you have this method, this def get user. You have this method get user. So while uh, taking the get user, you must connect with the DB. So what you are going to do, you will create one DB connection. After creating the DB connection, you will do the get user. Then you will perform the operation of sorting. Might be possible or might not be, but somehow in the APIs you perform some action, then only you return the data. Return data so that user which is using your get API retrieve the data after hitting a click or after going to a certain page. So in this part, we will see this method, this get user method is tightly coupled with this DB connection and get user. So if this part is changed, let's suppose your DB connection string currently using this Postgres, but after some time it is using this MariaDB. MariaDB or something else. It can be anything. So what you have to do, you have to come to your code, you need to change this DB connection part, then you need to change this get user part. Then again, you have to push some kind of changes into this method. And when you are developing API for your application, this is not the only one API which you are going to create. You are going to create this what you will say, get orders, number of APIs you are going to create for the get, for the post, and all the get and post and put and delete APIs, you need to create this DB and any other related methods which you need to get the connection or to get the data. It can be anything. It can be with the DB, or if you are using any third-party APIs to get the data, then you need to create a connection string to that API server. Then after creating the connection, you need to get the data. After getting the data, you need to do the action. Then after taking the action, you are doing some post, put, get, anything. It can be anything. So once when you see your method is tightly coupled for this scenario, your method is tightly coupled with these two. But if on the second hand, if I create a method, this get user, and I provide this get user in the arguments or in the parameters. So what you will do is you will take the users here from the get users. You will take the users from here and you can simply return it. Return user. So in this way, we just understood that in place of doing this complete action in a repetitive way in all our APIs, if we create one single method where we are taking this get users and we are calling that method here because we can call a method into our parameters of a function, we are just decoupling it. It is not tightly bound with the method. So if anything changes with your DB connection or with your data extraction, all you need to do, you need to change in just one method, this get user, and all the other methods which are using this functionality will remain the same. So here we understood that we have just decoupled a one or two line of code from all the methods to a single method. In this way, we created a reusability and a cleaner code, and also we injected the dependency. It is our dependency, sorry, my spelling can be wrong. So it is the concept of data injection. In place of retrieving or extracting data inside of method, what you are doing is you are taking this dependency outside of your method and using that dependency as an argument to your method and using it in your own way. So this is the data injection. This is the concept of Python. It is the terminology, and it is not just only used with the FastAPI. We can use it anywhere in our any code, or you can say we can use it in any kind of framework. It is a standard practice, and we should follow it. So we just now understood the functionality of data injection. Now let's come to the annotated, the second part. So let me clear this one. Okay, let's say the new painting. Don't save. Okay, and we have this annotated. From the Python, it usually come from typing import annotated. So again, it is not a functionality of FastAPI, but still we are using it, this annotated. And this annotated is used in so many ways inside the FastAPI. Let me tell you how. When you use this, first let's understand what is this annotated is. When you create a variable, let's say in the Python you create a variable a equals to 10. So from here we can understand this is 10. It is an integer, and this integer object is assigned to a. Let's make it more refined. This is a, which is of integer, which have a default value of 10. Now we have used the type hint, and also we have provided, okay, this is of type int. It is assigned to a, which have a value of default 10. Okay, let's refine it more. It is a, let's use this annotated. Under this annotated, we have provided that it is int, and here is the metadata. See how simple it is. So when we have used this annotated, what it is showing is this particular object, this particular variable a is of type int, and all the other section after this first this first element inside this annotated list are the metadata. It can be metadata 1, comma metadata 2, comma metadata 3. So this is the part of annotated. Here we have assigned this a as an integer. And when we use it with the FastAPI, what FastAPI do is we use this annotated with the type of object, and this FastAPI inbuilt functions. So in the earlier examples, you must have seen when we created one get API inside the def, we use something like, just it is for example, we have this get user where we have uh, in this get API we have provided the item ID. It is the curly braces. Sorry for my drawing. And from the item ID we were using this uh, and let's not take this item ID. Let's keep it simple. So just we can define our example only. And here we have this item from slash item, and in the get user we have this query path. Inside the query path, what we did is you use this query queue and we this annotated. Inside this annotated, it will be int or slash none, and also we have provided this query. Okay, I'm keeping it here, this query. So this was our method in the get user. Where we have provided this query parameter. Inside the query we have used this int or none. Usually it is not int, it is str, because it can be multiple, and it's a key value pair. So we have used this queue, we have used this annotated, where we have provided this queue will be of type string or none, so that after the item, if nothing is present, still our get API will work. And this query is divided, this query is provided by the FastAPI. This FastAPI is nothing but this FastAPI inbuilt function. So when we are using this annotated with this simple Python programming, this is the only metadata where we are providing the detail of this variable. Let's say you are using this a is for apple. It will be easy for the other developer to understand, okay, when this a variable is called, this a is referred to apple, this apple is doing something in our code in the later part. But when it comes to the FastAPI, it provide, okay, this a is a type object, let's say int or str or any Python object, and the second parameter is the FastAPI inbuilt function. This FastAPI inbuilt function can be path, can be query, can be body, can be header, anything. Whatever the function which is written, these all inbuilt functions are written by the FastAPI. So now we understood, okay, whenever we have seen this annotated, after the object, we must have seen these kind of methods, which is used to refine our API, or which is used to take data from the request to your API. See, this query, this body, this header, this path, these all are the functions which usually use. This path is used when you are providing something in your path. This query is used when you are providing some limitation or some condition to your query. This body is used when something is written in the request. There is multiple data and you want to use it. This header, it is a standard header data which usually come with all kind of API requests. So these kind of things will be used with the annotated. Okay, so we have understood about the annotated and the concept of DI. So let's do the practical implementation of post and get API with our data injection. And after it, then only you will understand how and why this annotated is very good and we should use it in the fast API. So let's go to our code terminal, and what we will do is we will create a code. Okay, so let's do some, we are going to create an okay, and get API and post API, and it will be of sample data because we have because we don't have any kind of database right now, so we are creating a dummy. Okay, so from FastAPI, import FastAPI, create an app for that. FastAPI, okay, we have created our instance. Let's create one GET request. Okay, we can do this @app.get. Okay, it will be on the item, and this item, let's keep it item till now, async def read item, read item. Okay, this read item, and what we are going to do, let's create the dependencies first. And this data injection is used with the fast API through the dependency. Fast API provide this dependency depends sorry this depends method to use the data injection. So let's create some dependencies first. So when we are reading an item from the DB, what we need to do is first we need to create the database session. After creating the database session, we need to validate whether the user is authenticated or not. When the user is authenticated, then we are retrieving the data and showing it to the user. So we are going to create one, let's say async def get DB session. After this get DB session, let's print DB session start. DB session start session equals to, we are going to create a fake data right now, so let's keep it simple, data, and then this one. Again, this data will have this name, and it will be called as item 1. Okay, we have one data also from the session, and we are going to use the yield. I'll tell you why we are going to use the yield once we execute this method. So stay with me till the end of the code, and finally print DB session, and it will be tear down. So why I've used this yield in place of return? Because when you are creating a DB session, you are performing some action with your DB, then you need to close your connection. So with the yield, what it do is, with the yield, it will give the session where it is called, and once it is done with the finally, we are terminating the session. Okay, and let's create this alias for it, db session with the annotated. I didn't import it, so just import from typing, import annotated. Okay, we have this annotated, and inside the annotated we are going to provide this will be as a dict, and what is this? It depends on get db session. Okay, so we have created our dependency using the depends. So here, let me explain you a bit. So what we create is we created a one db session object where we tell, okay, it will be of type dictionary, and it depends on this get db session, which is this method. So wherever it is called, it is an object, it will be assigned to a type, it will be assigned as type. So wherever this db section is called, it will automatically call this get db session, and it will create a session for it. Okay, let's create this get user. Let's do it with the async def get user. And what we are going to do is, when usually we take the user, uh, we pass the token from the header. So we will take that part also. But here we don't have anything. So what we will do is we will take this annotated as this str, or we will provide this none using the union, and from where we want it from the header. Again, header we need to import from the FastAPI. Okay, we have the header. I will explain you everything how this annotated is taking data in this case. And also when we create the object of this get user, as you can see in this db session, we haven't provided a bracket here. So it means we are not providing any kind of argument or parameters here, but still it will work. I'll tell you why. Because the same scenario we are going to handle it with the get user. So here we have this header, and inside the header what we will do is print checking auth, and then user equals to, let's say we have this username, and it is test user, and I guess that's it. This user is return the user. We have returned the user as well. Now we will create this user, let's say current user, because we are doing the operation for the current user. And this current user, again we will use this annotated. This annotated will be of type dictionary, and it depends on get db session. It is logical, because when you have provided the token, that token will be used against your db session. That db session will validate, okay, this is the correct user, and we can show this data or the requested data to this user. So we have created the current user. Okay, we have created our dependencies. Now let's create the get API. Okay, so inside the get API, what we will do is let's create this db session from this db session, and let's do one thing. Keep it bit. Let's make it bit more difficult for us only, so that we can, okay, we can see. Not with the single data, it is the bad practice. even for the demo for your own self. So item 2. Okay, we have two data right now in our session object, and that is with the getDB session. Okay, fine. So when we are using the get, that only DB session is required. There, when we are posting something, then user authentication is required. It might be possible for you that you need to validate the user as well. So what in that case you need to do is you are going to use this user as this current user. So here, or you can just simply use the current user because this current user is already using this getDB session. But here for this case we are going to create a get and post request. So let me demonstrate both the cases. So if I'm using this DB session, which I have already created, and okay, let's read it. Read the print reading item. Reading items, get DB session, let's use it. Return return. Okay. Okay, we can return something like this ID or okay, we have used this DB session. Okay, fine. So what we are going to do is, okay, so see, we have this 1 and 2 here inside of our data. So let's validate this. And for to validate it, we can take this item ID. This item ID we have took in the get request. So now list if item ID not in DB. Okay, we have used this DB, and inside of DB we need to use this data. So in this way we will validate. Otherwise, if I need to return all the data, I will be unable to create a sample just to show like it is checking the session which we have provided inside the getDB session. So if item ID, okay, what I did, if item ID, okay, I need to pass this item ID inside our parameters. Item ID, comma, and what I'll use this annotated. Again, this annotated, as I said, the first part will show what is the object type, and the second part will show this path. This path again we are calling from the FastAPI. So this FastAPI, what I will do is greater than equals to 1. See what I told you, that the second part in the FastAPI, here we can use the inbuilt methods of FastAPI where we can provide the conditions for the path. As I provided the path, it will directly provide this condition to this item. It will take the data from the path as your API endpoint, and from the API endpoint it will do the condition whatever we have provided here, this greater than equal to. So here we have this DB and this DB session. This DB session, okay. Okay, fine. It is nice. Okay. So what I'll do is if ID return, okay. If ID is not in DB data, then raise the exception HTTP. Okay, again, I need to call this HTTP exception. See, because of I have imported the correct libraries and I'm using the type hint, I'm able to get the libraries, class, methods, and all the errors at the right time. So it is reducing my code debugging time. HTTP exception, and this is status code equals to, let's say this is status. Again, I need to call this status. status. Okay, status dot http 400 http http underscore 400 404 not found details item is not present. Okay, if it is the issue, if it is the point whether this okay, let me return it once a bit here, and if it is present then id equals to this item id, and we are going to provide the data from the db. So it will be this, as it is a dictionary, so when we are returning a dictionary we need to provide the data like this. This is the data and it is the item id. Okay, so here we have this current one, get API variable not allowed in the type expression. Am I missing something? Am I missing something? I don't think so. Let's keep it more clean. DB session. I guess it should work. And here we have created our one get API. Let's create the post API also. So to create the post API, let's create the base class. So for that base class, we need to call the pydantic. From pydantic, import base class, base model. Okay, so we have called this base model, and let's create one base model here. Class item create base model, and here we will have only this name, which will be of str, and this price, which will be of str, and this price of this float, which we will keep it as optional. So here we have this as optional. So we have created this item class, this base model. Let's create a post API for it, app.post, and this post will create item with the URL of item. We have used this item. Okay, so we have this item. Let's keep it one. Okay, fine, that is fine. And async def create item. This create item, again, when we are using this create item, what we are gonna need is we need this item which we are getting from the post body, which it will be validated through the item create. Let's make it more readable. Item create, we need this db session, or okay, let's use this user only. User, current user. Okay, this current user. Here I'm not getting any error, but there I'm getting Y. So this db. Why I'm getting this error? Okay, we will see there later. So what we are going to do is, again, we will use the print statement just to validate whether we are doing fine or not. So what we are doing is user, this user, username, and creating item. Okay, so we will understand, okay, this user is, we will see all that in the logs, and in the post request, what we will do is this new ID equals to this max. So what we are going to do is we are going to, when we are posting a data through the post item, so we need to create an ID for it. So what I'll do is I'll do the max of this length of or I can say this max of, okay, this db. Okay, I don't have this db, so let's create the db also. This db session. db equals to db variable not allowed in type except type expression. Okay, okay, then will this work? No. What I am doing wrong here? db session. Ah, okay. I provided the wrong brackets here. Okay, got it. Okay, so we have this db session. This db session here is correct. This db session is correct is here. Okay, so what I'll do is db dot I need to assign an ID. So this db will have this data, and this data have keys. This data have keys, or I can say the first item, whatever is max, and plus one. So in this part, what I did was I take the data, I collected the keys, it returned me the keys, or I take the first item. Or you can do, okay, fine, that's fine. That we have this new ID, and then we have this db. db will we have data, new ID, and that will be item dot model dump. Okay, model dump. This model dump is used to put the data into that dictionary what we are getting from the request. So after dumping it, we are going to do the return statement, and this return is ID, and this ID will be the new ID, and this will be the dumped data. Item dot model underscore dump. So we have created a post API, and we have created our get API. Just don't get confused. This new ID section is only taking the data from our DB session, and it is checking how much data we have, and it is adding one to it. So if it have two data, then it will add plus one. If it will have three data, then again it will return four. So it will increment one, whatever the data is present inside of it. So we have created a very good code. Let's check whether it's working fine or not. Okay, let's save it. Let's go to the fast API. What just happened? Okay, we have a running terminal. Okay, I guess it should work. Let's go to our postman. Item not found. Item 3. Let's do the get first. Leave this one here. Details not found. Okay, why so? Because we have this item in place of items, and what we are searching is for 3. Item is not present. So it is the same error which we have provided here. Detail item is not present. And what data we have is this 1 and 2. So if I provide this 1, let's see what it will come. Okay, it generated the data, item 1. And let's see what we are getting in the backend. So we are getting this DB session start, reading the items, DB session tear down, and then it is returning the data. So once your transaction is completed, it is shutting down. So once it reads the data, it is closing down the DB session, then it is returning the data as a transaction. So we have validated for 1. Let's validate it for 2. Okay, it is working fine. Now let's come to the post update, post request. So here we are going to add this username as a test and this name as item 3. Okay, we are going to put the send request detail method not allowed. Why the method not allowed? 405 method not allowed. Okay, I'm providing the wrong statement here. Wrong URL. Let's do the post. Internal server error. Let's check why. From username, key name, username. It need the username. Okay, username. Let's understand what data which we have created. Username, test user. Okay, in the DB username, creating item. Username, we have this user, we have this username, and what else it needed? Internal server error, where we are doing wrong. Uh, we have this item, we have this user. This user is unable to create this. It is not getting this username from the payload. So I am providing this item, and it is the user, it is the username. Okay. Okay, let's verify what we did wrong in this code. So this post is using this user and DB session. We are getting failure in current user. This current user is depending on get DB session. Okay, it should be depend on get user. That's why we were getting this username error. And after this username error, okay, let's validate few more things. Token annotated. Okay, one more thing I didn't provide, that is default value. Okay, so if nothing is present, and by default nothing is present, so that's why we need to use this none. So if nothing is present, it will pass the none. It will accept, this token will accept this str and none. If nothing is present, it will pass the none, and it will check the data from the header. Okay, so we have corrected our method of depends method. And one more thing, let's check the API again. We have this item db current print username. We have increased the new ID. We assign the data to the new ID, and then okay, we have this issue here. So let's try it out again. The send error. Oh, great. Let's send it again with the another payload. Item 4. Okay, we have this item 3 and ID is 3 and item is 4. As because in our code we have just only two set of data, this 1, 2. So anyhow, the new data or the news record will only get the ID 3. So we have understood this coding of depends, how depends work. So now let's understand one more thing in the last, this how, as in the get user we are providing some parameter as token, but when we are using it with the current user inside the depends, we are not providing any kind of parameter or argument. Then how it is calling this get user? So when it is calling this get user, it is seeing that this header inbuilt function from the FastAPI is present. So once when I call this current user here, this current user called the depends. First it will go to the annotated. This annotated check the metadata. This metadata contains the FastAPI depends. As it is the method of FastAPI, this depends again check the internal parameters of the method. So once when it goes inside the parameters of method, it sees it is there the header. So once when the header is there, automatically whatever the data this request is getting from the user, and it is also adding header to it, it will take that data from here automatically. So that's it for this video, and there is always room for improvement, and I seek your feedback so that I can improve the data which I'm showing you or the content which I'm explaining to you. Your feedback is crucial for you and me as well, so that the later content, whatever I'm going to make, will be helpful for you. So please comment, please subscribe if you like this video, and also in the next part, we are going to learn about the asynchronous libraries, which will be used with the FastAPI APIs, so that there will be no bottleneck when you create your API. I will explain these all things into our next part. So till then, goodbye, and thanks for watching.